طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We looked at in the last session the defensive dimensionality of how we can defend against some attacks that can be induced to CPS environment. Okay, and you said one of the solution or one of the strategy to defend, which is considered as a defense dimensionality, is the defense in depth, where you will create layered defenses, as we mentioned last time. You can have firewall, intrusion detection systems, control access, physical security guards, and all the stuff that are considered as layers of defense. If one of the layer is deterred, sometimes, for instance, if one of the layer is depassed, or someone who managed to go against to break the first layer, he will find another layer and the second layer and so on. This is with relation to the defense in depth. And we looked at the other dimension of defense is the defense in breadth, where you do have all the devices, all the CPS devices will participate and coordinate the defense of everyone. That means if someone attacks one CPS, all the CPS devices will contribute and will help the other one to overcome that attack. Okay, and we looked at the example of having coordination to say coordinated defenses of multiple castles, and with multiple departments or multiple groups or users. It's like you have a group of users. If one of the user is attacked, all the other users should know about the attack and should help that user to overcome the attack and help him to defend himself. Because if they don't do that, he will be the next target for that attack. Okay, this is what is known as a defense in breadth. We looked at the user configurable data collection logging, and we said that specifically for the user or the data that is taken from personal CPS, we need to look at how we can protect such data. Okay, and sometimes a group of users have some specific characteristics that we need to gather the data. We need to take that data and log it. So it is very important to look at the privacy of the data, and we should make the user conscious about the decision that that data will be shared, collected and shared with others, and what type of data, what is shared with whom, and so on. The pattern obfuscation, we said sometimes the attacker will use the pattern to guess or to get information about some specific environment. For instance, if someone is looking at whether in that manufacturer or that CPS environment actually there is a process happening, and this is an important process, he will, for instance, he will look at the ICS energy usage pattern. If it is high, that means there is some specific important process running right now, and this is the correct time and appropriate time to attack such, let's say, manufacturer. Okay, we look at the example of, for instance, the security guard. When you change, you do shift. Okay, and let's say the night shift will give, let's say, its position to the day shift. At that time, every time is happening. All the shifts are happening at the same time every day. That means you are creating some types of pattern that will give vital information to the attacker. Okay, because you are following the same pattern every day. And we said one way of defending is to do pattern obfuscation, not to have the same pattern at the same time repeating every day through the year. We need to gather, we need to find a way how we can hide the pattern of user, or hide the pattern of energy, or it depends of what type of pattern it is running or it is found in such organization. Okay. Other attack that might happen with regard to the communication pattern. Okay, when I talk about communication pattern, that means sometimes the user will monitor, will eavesdrop the communication between the different CPS, and he will discover that there is some specific packet, some specific structure of the packet that is sent from CPS1 to CPS2, which is always the same pattern of the packet. Here we talk about the structure. We might talk about the pattern of the number of packet or messages that are sent every day from CPS1 to CPS2. Let's suppose, for instance, that every day, every hour, we have 1,000 packets or message is sent from CPS device 1 to CPS device 2. So this is type of the pattern. So if the attacker wants to attack such communication, what he will use, he will try to mimic, to create the same pattern, the same structure of the packet, and he will send the same number of packet, which is 1,000, for instance, to the CPS at the specific time. That means he's following the same pattern that is done in the communication between CPS every day. And the idea, or let's say the objective of creating such or mimicking such malicious packet, okay, is to try to evade if there is any intrusion detection system. Because sometimes we're going to see in another chapter, which is defensive chapter, when we talk about, for instance, intrusion detection system. Okay, for the intrusion detection system, some types of those devices work based on the behavior of the communication, for instance. The behavior, that means every day we do have the same number, the same pattern of users, the same pattern of the number of packets we are receiving from the outside. Let's say every day we receive 10,000 packets to that for that server. But 2 days we received 500,000, which is unusual. It doesn't follow the same pattern. That means it is mostly considered as something suspicious, and mostly it is an attack. Maybe it is a DOS attack. So when an attacker will look at the communication patterns, he knows that every day the normal number of packets or messages sent or received from the outside to the CPS environment or to the CPS device is every day 50,000. So when he wants to launch an attack, or he wants to infiltrate or send malicious packet with a message, he will follow the same pattern. He will send 50,000 or less. He will not send more than 50,000 because it will trigger, maybe if there is in place an IDS, IDS will detect that this is an unusual number of packet. Okay, in order just to evade, let's say, the IDS detecting such number. Okay, the same thing here when we talk about sending or creating communication during odd hours. You know that normally the communication between the machines will be done during daylight. Okay, for instance, from 9 to 5, which is the working hours of that manufacturers. But the IDS has detected that the communication is happening in the night, where normally and supposedly that there is no machine working at that time. It should not be any communication between devices, which will trigger the IDS. It will suppose that this is unusual message, which we suppose that we don't receive anything during this specific time or interval of time, but we are receiving something. That means something, it is suspicious. Okay, so this is the pattern. We need to obfuscate the pattern. We need not to show how, let's say, the CPS works, or how the communication patterns is reflecting, or it is done within a CPS environment. Okay, even for instance, as we mentioned, physical site visits to remote ICS can be a pattern. You know, for instance, if there are, let's say, you do have some sensors that have been scattered or distributed in some area, you know that, for instance, every week, every Thursday, okay, there are some people who come to that area, and it's like a Sahar. Let's give you an example of Sahar, for instance. You know that maybe every Thursday there is a guy who comes to that machine, to the Sahar, and record and take that recording. Okay, whether it is a tape or whatever, let's say how the data is stored, and he will just empty and take the data on his laptop, for instance, and will replace the tape by another tape. This is known as a pattern. That means it gives you an idea that every Thursday there is one guy who comes at the specific time to inspect that machine, to inspect that CPS. And this can be considered as a pattern. And what you need to do, because maybe that guy who is monitoring the inspection of that machine, he wants to do some attack on that machine, and he don't want to be at the same time when that guy is working on that machine. That means you are giving some type of information. It's like you are giving tips for that guy of some pattern of inspection for that device. So what you need to do, instead of having the same day, the same time, that guy will go, maybe the same guy will go to the same machine, you need to change that pattern. Okay, today, this week we did it in Thursday, another week we do it in Monday, we change the time, we change the employee or the guy who is inspecting that machine, and so on. This is part of, can be the physical, as we mentioned, even the physical visit to the site can be considered as a pattern. And you guys giving the attacker information about how to attack or when to attack that specific target. Okay, Shabab? And we said that authentication is the less of use application for the principle of confidentiality. In CPS, or the personal CPS, we talk about medical related devices. Usually, Shabab, for related devices or medical related devices. Let's say you have a device that is implemented on a patient body that will collect the data about the heartbeat, for instance, of some group of people or some group of patients. Let's say you are monitoring or you are doing analysis or a study, whatever, about a group of people from 50 to 60 years, and you have a group of people, and you put some devices in their body just to monitor the heartbeat for those group of patients, for instance. What will happen with that data? What do you know so far about such implementation? Any idea, Shabab? Yes? Any idea? Yes or no, Shabab?
Can you repeat the question, Dr. please?
The data that is collected by those medical devices, what will happen with that data? Do you have any idea, any clue? Faris, any idea?
Like, what do you mean by data?
The data that is collected. Let's say you're collecting a heartbeat data.
Yeah.
For a patient, you have implemented the device on the body of the patient. Some patients. What do you do with that data?
I'm just assign it to that patient and just.
Abdulaziz, any idea?
In terms of medical way or cyber way?
Medical way. What
would be analyzed to diagnose what the problems that.
Analyze the data. How do you analyze the data if the data is on that machine? It is implemented on that device. Let's say you have given someone who is wearing a device on his wrist to monitor his heartbeat? How do you analyze the data if the device is still on the body of that patient?
The data will come constantly, like every second, it will be updated.
We are talking about the data is sent. Normally, when you put that such device on the digital device, the data, you have two options. Sometimes you have to take the patients to tell the patient to come. Okay, for instance, you are monitoring heart activity. You just, let's say, stick a device to the patient's body, and you tell the device, you tell, for instance, that patient not to remove that device for 2 days or for 3 days, and he has to come back to the doctor. The doctor will take that device and take the data and analyze the heart activity for that patient. This is one way. That means you have to take the device and collect the data from the device physically, okay, and analyze the data. In some other devices, the data is sent automatically through the internet to the hospital, for instance, to the server, okay, where it is collected. It is stored in the server. And sometimes those servers, let's say, we call them as repositories, they will store not only the data of one patient, will store, you do have a number of patients who have the same device, and their data is sent together, and it will be stored in the same place. We call here, we is known as aggregated in mass. That means as a whole. Okay, and this repository is useful. It is sometimes useful for diagnosing or doing a study about individual people who have, as we mentioned, the same problem. There you have XYZ disease, and you are monitoring the data of those patients who have that disease, for instance. You implement the medical device on their body, okay, and the data is sent regularly to the server, okay. And here we said that instead of, let's say, sending exact data, that means I will say this data is the data of XYZ patient, okay. What you do, instead of showing the data, let's say giving more information about the data, what you need to do, for instance, if I am interested only to analyze the data, I am not related, or let's say I'm not interested to look at which patient this data correspond to, okay? I want just to analyze, to take it in mass, to take all the data, put it, for instance, in an Excel sheet, and draw a graph and do some analysis. Okay, in such, we talk about the data and resample the data, which means that if someone accesses that repository, will access that server, he will no longer be able to identify the data exactly to which person or to which patient belongs to that data. Okay, this is what we mean by we apply the pattern obfuscation. This is one way that we can apply the pattern obfuscation, is to hide, let's say, the data, because most of the data is identical. It is just reading data. It is reading numbers, for instance, without linking or relating each piece of data to some specific patient with his name, ID, or date of birth, whatever. Okay, we said that we are doing obfuscation. Okay. That means we are protecting that data. We are not relating that specific data to that to some specific users, for instance. Okay, Shabab? And we need, as we mentioned, in this way, you are protecting your, let's say, patient's data. Okay, you are giving assurance to the patients, or to the people who are participating in this, let's say, analysis, for instance, or in this study, that their data will be kept secret. It will be private. Okay, even if I am collecting the heartbeat reading from your from that device on your body, but that data will not be related to you. It will be sent as data, exact data. Here we talk about we are not, for instance, relating, let's say, saying that this data belongs to XYZ, and all this information is sent to the server or to the repository. We are just resampling. We are mixing the data of patient 1 with patient 2 with patient XYZ. Okay, so someone who will come to and access or attack or hack the repository or the server, he will no longer be able to identify exactly, let's say, the provenance of that data. Okay,
Doctor,
now,
is the repository some sort of a database or something?
yes, database. It is a server where you put where you store your data.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Another way of securing CPS is what you know as end-to-end security. End-to-end security, here we talk about maintaining security of the data from transmission to reception and storage. As we gave example of those medical device. Okay, when you are having the data collected on that patient body, that means you are going to transmit that data. You are going to send that data. That means you need to protect that data during transmission and reception. When that data is received at the other end, we need also to secure that data. And when that data is received and stored, we talk about the storage, we need also to find a way how we can store that data. Okay, so that means what we can do, we can have authentication, integrity, and encryption should be maintained at let's say through the application at all level between the devices. Okay, in order just to secure the end-to-end data. For instance, this company, which is Fitbit, have you heard about it, Shabab?
Yes.
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 Okay, so for instance, they are providing this type of devices, okay, that track some activity of some of your, for instance, for people. Okay, what you can do, for instance, they will store that data over a certain of time period. That means the data might be stored in this device for a certain period of time. Then that data will be uploaded to the manufacturer server through the internet. Okay, and the device, we talk about the device, the connection through the internet to the manufacturer server, the method of sending the data, okay, from this one, it says watch tool, from this device to the server, the manufacturer servers, which is, let's say, the final destination server. All this must be secure in order just to provide end-to-end security. That means one end you do have this device on someone hands, for instance, and the other end will be the manufacturer server. So we need to secure the end-to-end communication. This can be done by applying, for instance, encryption on the device. That means the data that is collected here will be encrypted using some secure connection to transmit the data as well. That encrypted data will be also sent through a secure channel. Okay, and we ensure that once the data reaches, for instance, or reach the servers, the manufacturer servers, that data will be protected using a variety of physical methods or logical method in order just to protect the data at the other end. Okay, and when we say simply using encryption, encrypting everything with the same key is one thing, which is, let's say, one of the challenge and one of, let's say, the problem that might appear. Okay, for instance, if you are using, okay, we said that we encrypt the data, we secure the data during transmission and so on. But now, when we say encrypting the data, imagine that you encrypt all the data with the same key. Okay, the same key that is used in this watch in XYZ person is the same key that is used to encrypt the data on another person and so on. Or for instance, let's say that Fitbit is using the same key to encrypt the data, or that is the same key that is implemented in all its watch, for instance, or trackers. That means if that key is compromised, you are compromising the whole, let's say, set of those trackers or a set of watches. Okay, that means it is very important to have a good management of keys. Okay, in order just to have a way of including, not if one device is compromised, if the key of one device is compromised, the other devices should not be also compromised. So this is an example of an end-to-end security. What means you are securing, let's say, the communication from one device to another device. Not only the communication, let's say, from, as we mentioned, from transmission to reception. Okay, guys? Another way of securing your CPS is what is known as tamper detection security. Here we talk about deterrence and detection. Deterrence, that means you are pushing back the attacker. Okay, and detection, you are detecting if there is something happen. If you do have unauthorized access, or someone who is with unauthorized access manipulating your equipment, or manipulating the CPS. Here we talk about specifically at a remote or uncontrolled locations. This is the same idea about the CPS. As we mentioned, sometimes you put some sensors or some devices, let's say at the border. If you have a border with another country and you want to track illegal immigrant, for instance, you will put, and you have a long border with thousands of kilometers, for instance. So what you need to do, you need to put at some places some devices that will, if there is any, the sensors, if there is any activity, those sensors will trigger an action and will send a message to the control room, where they will send a patrol to that area to verify whether you do have really a human or animals or whatever that have triggered that specific device. And here we talk about that remote. It is far away. You might find someone who will try to tamper, for instance, or to distract those devices. Okay, in some places you do have uncontrolled locations. That location, it is not controlled. So you will find people that will freely go to that place and distract or damage the devices that are there. So now how do we protect those devices or those CPS devices? By using what is known as a tamper-resistant logs, logs that require authorization code. You can have security camera, allows any variety of other physical prevention and detection techniques. You might have, for instance, you might have that if you have a camera, like you, for instance, let's go to the simple example. You have your camera at home, okay, that is recording in activity outside your home. Okay, let's say the basic thing that a thief can do is to reach that camera and damage the camera. Okay, and one way of protecting your camera is to cover, let's say you will cover your camera with let's say a metal let's say a structure that will prevent anyone from throwing a stone to smashing your camera, reaching your physical structure of the camera and damaging the camera. So this is what is known as a tamper detection to the seal. That means we do have a tamper resistant. Like you do have your mobile phone, for instance. Okay, you have your mobile phone and it does have a hard cover that will protect the mobile phone if it falls down, for instance, from being damaged. This is another what is known as a tamper resistance lock. You can have locks instead of having a simple lock on your door or on the door server. You have a tamper resistant lock that is, let's say, a strong lock that will require authorization. Maybe it will require a fingerprint, iris, whatever, in order just to protect physically the device itself from someone accessing that device and physically damaging the device itself. Okay, Shabab? We stop here. If you have any question, guys.
Dr.